It's collection lock time! For those that are new here, hi, we're collecting everything in WoW, including source IDs, on a brand new account. I started at 0%, and now we're at 0.35%. So let's get collecting! We start this episode off with some dailies. Dailies have achievements attached to them, and the rewards can also be super useful. As we see here, where a fishing daily resulted in me looting a recipe from the Bag of Shiny Things reward. Talida's a terrible cook, so she can't do anything with it yet, but it's something to keep hold of for later. I also tried to find the Warcraft Rumble machine. Yes, I know this isn't classic. It was quite literally introduced in Dragonflight, but the machine is in Stormwind, and it felt like it'd be something quick and easy to do. As it turns out, the Dragonflight part of that sentence is really important because I am in an instance version of Stormwind that cannot actually currently access the Warcraft Rumble machine. At this point, I was thinking I may have to jump forward to make things a bit easier because I'm also flying at a flying snail's pace. But alas, we collect in Classic, definitely Classic, nothing else. I will not get distracted. Hey, my inventory's full. What the heck? You know, I'm really missing my Traveler's Tundra Mammoth right now. Unfortunately, I had to leave the sword and the stinky piece of cheese behind, and I'm sure there's a joke in here somewhere. But anyways, I sold my gear, came back, the chest had gone. I kinda just figured at least I got the rogue only mask on my paladin, and I'd get the rest later on the new character, but fortunately for me, I had nothing to worry about because the postmaster had my back. I also almost got my first ever toy, but I needed a standard scope. For this challenge, I'm trying to avoid using the auction house unless it is absolutely necessary. For example, if a certain NPC is seriously bugged. So I guess I need an engineer. The camera can wait. I'm not really the selfie type of person anyway. I also popped into the Dark Moon Fair and almost immediately left. See, this version of the Dark Moon Fair was introduced in Cataclysm. There was a version in Classic, but it didn't have a portal, and as an Archmage, I really do love my portals. Having no portal, pretty dull. Who wants that? So yeah, we grabbed the Dark Moon Adventurer's Guide, which will allow me to get quest drops from dungeons, raids, and PvP, and then we left. We can come back and do quests when we get to Cataclysm, right? You know, now that I think of it, I have been asked that quite a lot. How am I separating Classic and Cataclysm content? Because as it turns out, a lot of the Classic zones are actually Cataclysm zones disguised as Classic. Even Northshire has a fancy revamped Cataclysm version. Look, they added fire! It don't get much fancier than that. Anyways, the simple answer is, I'm not separating them. I am avoiding zones that were introduced in Cataclysm. Like, I'm not gonna suddenly head to Deep Home or Vashtir, and I'm also not rushing to Twilight Highlands or Mount Hyjal. But in order to do classic content, I do kind of have to do Cataclysm content. I did encounter a small issue where I thought I was running the Mr. Pandaria dungeon, because I was. The Scarlet Halls was revamped in Mr. Pandaria, but it was also in the random classic dungeon queue. In the end, I decided if it shows up in the classic section of all the things, it's fair game, so we persevere. After a few dungeons, we eventually ended up in Lower Blackrock Spire, where we got our first ever pet, a Smolderweb hatchling, which we named Spy Crab, because it's a spider that looks like a crab. I'm told this is a Team Fortress 2 joke, but honestly, I do not get it at all. Anyways, I then immediately got lost because I have not done Lower Blackrock Spire enough to know the route, and the group just kept going. I eventually figured it out, but I'm not gonna lie, it was not my brightest moment. After the dungeon, I once again realised I have a dragon's hoard's worth of gold, so I bought some more vendor items from the local Stormwindian tailor, Mr. Duncan Cullen. I was then thrown into a Warlords of Draenor dungeon. I swear I queued for Classic, but here we are. During this, I hit level 35, which means I can technically solo dungeons. But I wanted to keep going with the Dungeon Finder in the hopes that I get more transmogs from the Satchel of Helpful Goods. I have a sneaking suspicion that I may need to be a different spec for this, and for some, maybe even a different class. But I still think it's worth doing until I properly outlevel the dungeons. I mean, I got a bunch of loot from this particular dungeon, and the goal is to collect everything, so why not? Through dungeons and quests, I also finally earned enough gold to unlock my warband bank, which is going to be a huge help when I start focusing on professions. I'll now be able to easily transfer regions between characters instead of having to send it in the mail. After a couple hours of dungeons, I realised I was getting a lot of repeated dungeons, so I checked my achievements to see which classic dungeons had not been completed. completed and queued solely for those. Even though there'll still be an abundance of loot to obtain, having the classic Dungeon Master achievement completed will be a huge help. And whilst waiting for my queue to pop, I accidentally explored all of Elwyn Forest. Not complaining, I more just didn't realise I was missing a section, but hey, there's a lot of ground to cover in the wonderful world of Azeroth, so I'll take this tiny step to freedom. By level 46, I had finally completed Elwyn Forest and figured I was prepared. No, Illidan, now is not the time. I was prepared for solo and classic raids. So I headed to Onyxia's lair and immediately found out that I couldn't go inside because I'm technically still in Cataclysm time walking. I really miss my mage right now. Anyways, I decided to go back into the dungeons again. I'm gonna make the most of the queue whilst I've still got it, and the raids can be completed at any time really, so to S4 we go! There, I pretty quickly found Slark, a rare murloc which gave me 2 new transmogs, and I no longer feel bad about wasting all that time travelling. And I spent a good while trying to befriend a chicken to make sure I could get the hidden quest Cluck. For those that are unaware, Farmer Saldine sells some special chicken feed. All you need to do is buy a bag, cluck a bunch of times at a chicken, and by that I mean target a chicken and type /chicken until the chicken turns friendly. It can be any chicken in the area, but it may take a few hundred attempts, so keep on clucking. Eventually, you'll get the quest, which requires you to offer up some special chicken feed. And that's it. Congratulations on your new chicken friend, literally. You now have a chicken egg, which gives you a Westfall chicken. Yes, queen! Save that chicken from egg poverty. Anyways, I finally got my first transmog achievement after buying and selling some vendor gear in Westfall. Now I know there's a lot still to get, but 100 weapons and offhands is a huge achievement. By the way, I did create a guild for Collection Lock. I know there's a lot of guilds floating around for various challenges, but my friend Shaq suggested this, so I grabbed a guild roster and some signatures. Whilst doing that, I also decided to do some blacksmithing. I need a level 300 blacksmith to forge sulfurous, and at the time of this video releasing, the Collector's Bounty event will be running. In this event, Blizzard is massively increasing drop rates of legacy loot, meaning I'm more likely to get the Eye of Sulfurous, so it makes sense to level my blacksmithing as much as possible in preparation. This was also really useful for collecting some new plate transmogs. I then finished up my quest in Westfall and moved on to the next zone, Red Ridge. Now I'm gonna be honest here, I hate the quests in Red Ridge. There's a lot of elites running around and I just think they're unnecessarily complicated, but they must be done, so F it, we ball. I also did Stratholm and obtained another blacksmith pattern, and in Red Ridge I also found Nullfeaster and got yet another spider pet. Honestly, thank God for arachnophobia mode, because wow, spiders be creepy. And a quick thank you to those in chat who were helping me along the way, because you saved me from nearly locking myself out of a breadcrumb quest for the Sunken Temple. I still completed the dungeon, but I will have to make sure I come back after collecting the breadcrumb quest. So to wrap up this month, I decided to check the trader's post. Unfortunately, due to being unable to play as much this month, I had only earned 400 tenders, which meant I had 1,200 to spend. I spent them all, obviously, on 2 mounts and some transmog. A lot of this stuff will return to the trader's post in the future, so I'm not too worried about missing stuff here. And the mounts got me a new achievement, Stable Keeper, which is rewarded for obtaining 10 mounts usable by a single character. So all things considered, I'm pretty happy with that. And yes, I know the Midsummer Fire Festival is missing from this video. Unfortunately, due to work commitments and casting a super cool Community Mythic Plus tournament, I missed the whole event, which means I'm going to have to wait a whole year to get any of the event rewards. But hey, work should be less of an issue over the coming months. This year has actually been pretty bonkers, but if you want to hear more about that, come and ask me about it during my streams at twitch.tv/ArchmageSar. I stream every weekend, but until then, happy collecting and best of luck to all of you attempting this challenge.